It's crazy. The the wheels are spinning faster and faster and faster these days. It seems everywhere you look, in every single area, not just in finance, but everything. It just seems keep your eye on the bouncing ball. It's hard to do. One of the things that I find most intriguing about this move, Chris, and I don't think you're hearing enough about this, but I think this is, in one respect, kind of the market's way of saying we've lost confidence in the Fed's ability to restrain inflation, because what you're seeing now is that, typically we've seen gold and bond prices move in symmetry as bond prices were rising and interest rates were falling. Price of gold was rising. And that's the Gibson's paradox, the inverse relationship between real interest rates and gold. But we're seeing it now diverging. And this is a big deal because, gold used to be positively correlated with bonds. And now we're seeing bonds falling and interest rates rising again, slowly. But, not the pivot that everyone was expecting, and yet gold is doing well in the face of real positive interest rates, at least if you believe the CPI. Bottom line is this is a big development for the price of gold, and now that it's busted through its all-time closing high, I mean, in terms of resistance, there is none. The sky's the limit. Now, are we going to get to those numbers like when Bank of America was saying 3,000, or is this the move up? The one that we've all been waiting for. And when you're beaten down so many times, you end up getting used to it, and you're waiting for the shoe to drop. When you look over your left shoulder and see what Bitcoin is doing, and your right shoulder and Nvidia is doing, you wonder, is that how markets are supposed to react? Is that how bull markets are supposed to go? Or is it more like the price of gold, which is slowly and methodically the tortoise, going higher and higher and higher every single year for the last several? Is this the move we've all been waiting for? I guess only time will tell. But I think in the face of rates that are positive against the CPI anyway, a real return, seeing gold move higher is a very bullish sign as far as I'm concerned.
Any thoughts on silver as we see this move in gold?
Chris, there's the phrase asymmetrical risk reward. And it basically says, what is the asset that I can own that has the lowest downside risk and the best upside potential? I mean, in my life, I've never seen anything like silver, because it has so many utilities. The folks in Canada trying to push it towards a strategic metal rather than an industrial. And I think it should be a strategic metal. It is needed in so many capacities, and even in things that the military industrial complex uses that really isn't even openly counted on the supply demand fundamentals from the Silver Institute. So from military to green to digital, the need for silver is massive. And then the monetary aspect that people have awoken to over the last 3 years, largely in thanks to people like yourself who have woken up the public to the value, this asymmetrical risk reward that, the old statement, markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. But think of it this way: we are running. I mean, there's approximately, right? I'm not sure on this, but I would say approximately. Let's say there's 100 billion or less in silver above ground, right? I mean, somewhere in that neighborhood. We're accumulating that much debt right now every 100 days, or excuse me, every 10 days. A trillion every 100 days, 100 billion every 10 days. So when you talk about how much money is out there versus how much silver is out there versus the need for it and the real potential in investment, if you take the fact that you have these stupid commercial banks that have been short massive amounts for years, rendering silver the asset on the COMEX that has the largest concentrated short position of any commodity traded on the entire exchange. You take that out of the equation, and yeah, silver should be way higher. Now, I guess the bottom line is that you can only manipulate any market over a very long period of time by pushing it in the direction that it is going. And I think the difference between the markets we see now, Chris, and the markets that we've all lived through, is that for the very first time in my career, 34 years, I think there is a big push globally to accumulating assets, commodities. It used to be dollars and treasuries and stocks and real estate, but that's an environment that I think it has cycled and is moving the other direction as commodities and tangibles are moving into a bull phase at a time when, you think about it for a moment, you got mining eviscerated, exploration eviscerated, you got sentiment at the lowest levels. At the same time, you got sky high deficits and massive debt and all of the issues that we see around us that we talk about geopolitically and politically and socially and morally. The contrarian side of things would say there's never been a better time to jump head first into silver. But like I said, the market has a way of staying irrational longer than we can all stay solvent. But from a standpoint of logic and mathematics and economics, I don't know that there is a better place to be. So yeah, have strong fingertips, hang on, because I don't think I've ever seen a better opportunity in my life, in my career, a better opportunity of asymmetrical risk reward, lowest downside, best upside. And I don't think there's even a way to shoot a hole in that, at least in my logic.
Here you go on the silver side. This was from the COP28 Climate Change Conference. And interesting note, agreed to work together to triple the world's installed renewable energy capacity to these 11,000 gigawatts by 2030. Again, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a one-to-one correlation, but if that's saying that based on where we are now and the amount of metals that going into the green agenda, that you're going to get triple that. And certainly, as you talked about with the situation in silver, where in a deficit, seeing the inventories come down, and then you're going to triple the amount going in here. While Elon Musk is saying that he actually could power the U.S. with solar panels. He was saying it is possible if they could get a battery that would power that. So it leaves you wondering what this situation looks like in 5 or 10 years, and whether we'll have the silver to do all these things that we want. And meantime, something I came across yesterday I wanted to run by you. This was actually from April of last year, but interesting. I hadn't heard her actually phrase it this way. Sanctions against Russia could hurt the U.S. dollar as countries like Iran and China seek alternative currencies for trade. But there was a good quote in here from Janet Yellen. She says, there's a risk when we use financial sanctions that are linked to the role of the dollar that over time it can undermine the hegemony of the dollar. But it's okay because the U.S. only uses the dollar as a tool judiciously.
Yeah, well, and that's the entire rallying cry, if you will, for de-dollarization, because the dollar is the tool of the sanction. And if no one wants the dollar anymore, then the sanctions become meaningless. And you could argue they've already kind of hit that wall. I mean, look at the ruble. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it was the best performing currency of 2023, or very close to it, if not in the midst of crippling sanctions. But it is the rallying cry that are bringing all of these countries together, because it is the tool of the U.S. hegemony, and she's right, and that's why you have to wonder. I mean, it's almost too stupid to be stupid. They know what they're doing by weaponizing the dollar and crossing the Rubicon of saying what she just said in Brazil the other day, which is as stupid as a mud wall. And that is, yeah, we need to confiscate that 380 billion, not just sanction it and freeze it, but confiscate it, because we need to use it to rebuild the Ukraine. Now, you cross that Rubicon, there will never be a country, at least in the Southern Hemisphere, that will ever trust us ever again, and rightfully so. And I think that's when you start to question, could this have been really thought out? Are they trying to reset the system by having the world dump dollars and coalesce in a group that is rapidly growing, where another 35 countries have formally applied to the BRICS, another 20 plus more have informally applied, where these countries are gaining a mass amount of humanity, the majority of all of the world's energy production in the strategic shipping lanes, and it's still early in the game. So, but by continuing to impose these kinds of sanctions from a country that much of the world views as hypocritical, look at what's happening in Iraq. That's the big deal. They're kicking the Western coalition forces out. They've made trading in dollars illegal. If you own a business, you can wind up in jail and they'll take your business. And there are no green dollar bills in the country anymore as of January 1, because they made 90 billion in oil revenue last year, asked for $1 billion a few months ago, and we said not now. And so, when you talk about hypocritical, we invaded their country 20 years ago and are still sanctioning 14 of their banks. And so when you talk about and under false pretenses, looking for weapons of mass destruction, didn't find any. Sorry, but we're still here. And so when you talk about the way the world views us, and then looks at the way that our fiscal constraint is out the window, and then you look at a country that's maybe lost its bearings with the elections, with the judicial system, with the lawlessness, with the borders. You go on and on and on, and the wokeness and loss of traditional family values, and all of these things are they intended? Is it too stupid to be stupid? And that's why I always go back to Jared Bernstein, the lead economic advisor to the U.S. government, who says we should lose the world reserve status. This is the main economic advisor to Biden, because it's a privilege we could no longer afford. So by weaponizing the dollar, by signing an executive order to go green, and then blowing up what it means to be an American on many levels, where our culture is being whitewashed, yeah, I think you could argue in a very logical fashion, without being a nut job or a tinfoil hat or a conspiratorialist, that could this really have been thought out? Are they trying to do this? Do they want to point to a villain? And I go back to what Richard Russell said many, many, many years ago, and God bless his soul. He was the smartest man I ever knew. And he said the Fed has two choices. This is back in, 20 years ago, and that would be to inflate or die, inflate or default. A lot of people say, no, we can pull ourselves out of this. He said you have two choices, inflate or default. Well, maybe the third choice is to find a villain. And those are the villains: Xi Jinping, Putin, and OPEC, and the BRICS. They're the ones that created a reset. If not, then our politicians are just completely and totally imbeciles, or maybe this was thought out.